We are living through a historic turning point in American politics. For 50 years, this country was run by an establishment policy agenda shared by both parties in favor of globalization, automation, uncontrolled immigration, and the centralization of government and the economy. In 2016, that consensus was overthrown in a populist revolution. Of course, Donald Trump on the right, but also Bernie Sanders, paving the way for what we see today. The Democrats lurch to the populist left. That is dangerous for America, because the more we see of these new loony left policies, the clearer it is that they'd bring disaster for our economy and society. But it's a danger for Republicans too, because unless they develop a positive populist agenda of their own, they'll just be swept away. That's because on issue after issue, the populist left is responding to people's real concerns. Americans are right to be angry about inequality. If you're part of the globally connected knowledge economy elite, your wealth has soared over the last few decades. But for most working Americans, incomes have been flat or falling since the 1970s. Worse, many millions of responsible Americans who work hard still find themselves in a permanent and precarious state of economic insecurity. For example, a recent Federal Reserve study found that 40% of Americans couldn't afford a $400 emergency expense, like an unexpected medical bill. In response, AOC's Green New Deal, now backed by most leading Democrat presidential candidates, promises high-paying federal jobs to anyone who wants one. Cory Booker has actually introduced a job guarantee bill, claiming it would give all Americans a shot at a day's work and, by introducing competition into the labor market, raise wages and improve benefits for all workers. But the paper that his plan drew from estimated the total annual cost of a federal jobs guarantee to be over $500 billion. It's obvious who'd end up paying for it: the taxpayer, which of course is all part of the plan for the loony left populists.
Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your 10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%.
Tippy tops. Can't get enough of that. All right. Presidential candidate Julian Castro also wants to revoke the Trump tax cuts.
I absolutely would look at undoing the tax cuts that benefited the super wealthy and benefited corporations.
Wake up, Julian. I think you're not going to get the presidency if you're half asleep when you do your interviews. Anyway, Elizabeth Warren, she's planning a new wealth tax. Quote, "We need structural change," she says. "That's why I'm proposing an annual tax on the wealth of the richest Americans." But these taxes are not structural change. They're punitive, not positive. High taxes would actually hurt working Americans by cutting investment, leading to lower growth and fewer jobs. Wealth taxes make the rich poorer. They don't make the poor richer. But here's the key political point. Republicans can't just scream Venezuela about all this loony leftism. You need a positive populist alternative to give working Americans economic security. So instead of higher taxes on the rich, how about lower taxes on workers? Slash payroll taxes and institute a real living wage. It doesn't make any sense that the federal minimum wage hasn't budged in almost 10 years when the cost of living has only continued to rise. But in a broader sense, what the left's version of populism gets wrong about inequality and poverty is the superficial way they approach it. Their plans target the symptoms of poverty. We should be aiming at the underlying causes, and one of the biggest is family breakdown. Census data shows that children living with a divorced single parent are 50% more likely to be living below the poverty line compared to children from two-parent homes. Another study showed that, quote, "the fraction of children living in single-parent households is the strongest negative correlate of upward income mobility." The left lecture us all the time about believing the science on climate change. Well, it's time they stopped denying the science on family. A child starts life at a steep disadvantage if they come from a broken family. The neighborhood they live in, the schools they attend, even the food they eat, these are all factors that impact childhood development and are affected by household income, which plunges if a family breaks up or never gets together in the first place. Here's what the populist left gets wrong about inequality. Americans understand that inequality is the price you pay for opportunity. And they're prepared to pay that price as long as everyone has access to opportunity. But the reason Americans are so angry right now is that the ladder of opportunity has been broken. Conservative populists need to put the rungs back on that ladder to reboot social mobility. That means helping families come together and stay together, But of course, it also means fixing education. In too many parts of the country, our schools are blocking opportunity instead of building it. 2016 figures show that in 1/3 of Baltimore's public high schools, not a single student scored proficient on the state's math exam. Not a single one. Another study found that in Chicago, 1 in 4 African-American students attends a subpar school. Of course, there are many excellent public schools in America, but they're typically the ones serving neighborhoods where families are already doing well. A Stanford study found that the gap in standardized test scores between affluent and low-income students has grown by about 40% between 1960 and 2007. The proven answer to this is to help children escape failing schools by giving their parents real choice. Of course, the public sector unions hate that because it's a threat to their power. But instead of backing opportunity, the loony left populists back the unions who block it. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, they're all falling over themselves to suck up to their big union donors. What a bunch of hypocrites they are, railing against the rich, then doubling down on the very system that perpetuates inequality in America, the public sector education monopoly. Radical school choice should be the next big crusade for conservative populists. And it's one that has the advantage of being truly popular, with 73% support among Latinos, 68% among whites, and nearly the same with African Americans. But our education system blocks opportunity beyond high school. And once again, left-wing populists have exactly the wrong answer.
We should have free tuition at public colleges and universities. That should be a right of all Americans.
No, I think the word you're looking for, Bernie, is wrong. It's wrong to force every young American at taxpayer expense into a cookie-cutter 4-year college program ending in a useless degree that won't lead to a job but will land them with crippling debt. The unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds is over twice the national average, and student loan borrowers owe close to $1.5 trillion. But the left-wing populists strike a chord when they focus on this issue. So conservative populists need a positive answer. It's time for a radical rethink of the whole system. Make it much more open and flexible. Help students focus on their individual strengths. Often that might be a blue-collar career. Quote, the jobs that make civilized life possible, as my guest, Mike Rowe, put it a few weeks ago. Give every American the opportunity to thrive in the economy of the future with ongoing affordable access to skills training from the private sector. Build on the great start made by Ivanka Trump and her National Council for the American Worker. On jobs, on schools, on family, we've seen a decades-long collapse in opportunity. Yes, things have started to turn around, and that's great. But a half-century of establishment rule brought deep problems for working Americans. And the appeal of socialism is no surprise when capitalism failed for so many. That's why it is a huge risk for Republicans to just sit back and hope the loony left populists simply self-destruct. The establishment, it's dead. America's not going back to the corrupt and incompetent never-Trumpers and their swampy counterparts in the Democratic Party. The future is populist. The question is what kind? The negative, vindictive, top-down, centralizing authoritarianism of the left, or a positive, people power version of populism on the right, pro-worker, pro-family, pro-community? Tell me what you think of that at Steve Hilton X and at NextRevFNC. Soon we'll take a look at the populist choice on immigration, healthcare, and much more.